Okay, you've probably already figured out that I don't do professional filming. So I want to start out with, this is for those of you who won a word building kit and you're not quite sure how to use it. So we will do, when we talk about a child's brain or any reader's brain, there's some links, connections that have to occur. We have to connect the letters or the symbols to the sounds that they represent, symbol to the sound, and then make meaning. And that's not too tricky once you have a strong connection between the sound symbol relationship, and if you have enough vocabulary to make meaning from it. But when we're spelling, we have to go reverse. So we know what we want to spell. Maybe we know the meaning of what we're going to spell. And someone tells us it or shows a picture, spell whatever this picture represents. We need to know the sounds. And that's hard for some kids, to break apart a word that they know well into the separate sounds. And then from the sounds, the brain has to be analytical and decide, well, what symbols do I use to represent each of those sounds? And then we get those aligned, and we have all three again, meaning, sound, symbol. But it is harder to spell than it is to read, and harder to learn to spell than it is to learn to read for most people. So if you receive one of these word building kits as our prize, then you will be able to see that it has a place for each of the magnet tiles, a place for kids to build their word, but there's also a box of just whatever you're focusing on that day. So if it's just a beginner, you would probably have A and I, and then you would have some continuant sounds, M and N. You'd have S, T, P, to be able to build some words with them. But an advanced beginner is one who knows lots of the letters and what those represent. Now it could be that your child is not yet in kindergarten, or is in kindergarten but hasn't mastered all of the spellings. So you could go ahead and take off anything that they haven't been taught yet. And then you could pull down the ones you want to work with that day. And you'll do some building of words. Maybe your child has an R in his or her name, so you know they know that one. Your child already knows for mom, and probably the N. And then if your child knows more, you can pull out more. If you're just beginning at home with your child, you may want to ask them, what does this one represent? And if they can say that this represents, then go ahead and put that one in. The consonants I chose here are continuous consonants, everything except for P and T. All of these are continuous. That means we can say the sound and hold the sound out until we run out of air. These are the best to use for young readers, because then when they're blending them, they can stretch out each sound instead of chopping the sounds. So when we segment words, it's kind of like we're chopping vegetables with a knife. We're chopping and segmenting the sounds from a word. But in reading, we're trying to get them into the habit of blending and making it very smooth and connected. And so that's why I like to push continuant sounds first. All of the vowels are continuant sounds. Okay, so if we were to start, we could even say, all right, Grandpa wears a hat. Go ahead and build the word hat. And give them as much support as they need as they're getting used to using this board. So we'd go ahead and build hat. Then at this point, you only want to change one sound at a time. So maybe we'll go in baseball, we hit the ball with the bat. So let's spell the word hit. Right now we have, and have them read it, hat. All right, but we want to change this to hit. And so they'll have to analyze and figure out which sound changed from hat to hit, and then change the spelling. And then we're going to go ahead and switch from hit to sit. And so we'll go ahead and swap that one out. If they're really excited about a word that you don't have the symbol for, this is a whiteboard, dry erase board. So what if they want to talk about baseball again and say, can we spell the word mitt? I could do mitt. And so they would swap that out, mitt, and then you say, you know what, when we're talking about mitt, there's another spelling for t, and it is 2 T's, and you can have them write 2 T's in there for mitt. And then you could switch, you could keep the 2 T's there and say, let's spell your cousin's name, Matt. And they go ahead and spell Matt. And then when you're ready for a new sound, you could just erase the TT. All right, let's go ahead and switch Matt, like in yoga, we're on a yoga mat, to pat. You pat your lap if you want the dog to jump up and sit on your lap, pat. And then we can switch out, let's do sat. And then switch it out. And they get very excited, and it pays off, because the more they can spell, the smarter they feel, and they're giving relevant practice to knowing the sound symbol relationship. We see a lot of kindergarten letters that go home. Make sure your child knows all of their letters. Well, the names of the letters are not as important as the sounds that they represent. And they will learn the names of the letters. And one thing about this kit is we included on the back the tracing the alphabet. So this is a great time to discuss the names of the letters. So you could, talk about the letter A, the name of A, instead of talking about a or the sound A in words. You can talk about the letters as you're teaching them to form them. One other thing we included, as they're getting faster at writing neatly, you can set a timer, and I would do this each week, maybe even twice a week, and set a timer for 60 seconds and see how many they can trace in 60 seconds neatly. And then also you could do it where you're timing them on writing them without trace lines. So they can still look here to reference it, but they'll write them down here, and we'll calculate how many they write. At the beginning of kindergarten, it may take them a long time to write it. So then if you have some kind of a magnet, you could say, let's count how many you did. Oh my goodness, you got 5 of them done in that amount of time. And then the next week, they can move their little magnet or whatever they're using to mark it, or a marker, and then say, oh, I got 8 neat letters written in 1 minute. And so that's rewarding when they track their own progress. Up here, we use some more math structures to show the bonds. So in math, there'll be like a 1 and a 4, and then 1 and 4 make 5. But in reading, when they're ready, you can go ahead and do some blends here. So we're going to have S and T, or T and S. So, well, let's see. I hardly ever see words with T and S. So let's push these up and see what sounds. If we're going to blend those 2 sounds together, we knew this one is S and this one T. But together, how would you say that? It's still 2 sounds, but how would you say it so it's like smushed together? And then they can practice st. You could even do, before they're ready for consonant clusters and blends that way, you could even do p and I. Let's go ahead and do that. Let's do p, I, p. And so we know when we blend p and I, We can make pig, we can make pit, we could make pin. And so just getting them used to blending. I think for a very beginner, I would start blending right at the beginning our tiny, tiny words. So we have I, and they say the sound as they slide it. It. And then also you could do I, z, and make sure from the beginning that they know the S represents the Z more often than the Z represents the Z, and a lot more often than ZZ represents Z. So we need to introduce that S can spell S and S can spell Z. So we say I, Z. So then that doesn't become a strange word that we have to use a flashcard to help them try to memorize it by sight. This becomes logical to them. I, Z. This represents Z more often than Z. And then we can actually add on to that too. Once they know is, think of how much more they can do. They can go ahead and do his. They can do with it and its. They could try its. So lots there. We could also do in, and then how many more we can do with that little piece. And then also as and an, all those small words that we see those so often within text. So if they already have those down because they've been taught that simple fact that S can represent S and S can represent Z right from the get-go. And then even as they're learning, they can, when you go through and you talk about these, you can actually say, you know, A spells a, but sometimes A spells a. And if you have people in your family or neighbors that have a name with a long A in it, show them how to spell that name. And then E can spell e, and E can spell E. All right, so the main thing we want to do is pull out the ones you're working on that day so they have fewer choices here. And as they get stronger and they know more of the sound symbol relationship, you can keep all of them up here when they're ready. All right, hopefully that's helpful. Another thing I was thinking of, we actually had a lot of teachers suggest that we incorporate some of what they're learning in kindergarten math up here. So I talked about the number bonds and how we can use it with blending letters. I talked about the number line as they're getting confident in counting and using numbers. We give them a purpose for a number line in recording how improved they are at their handwriting fluency. Then up here is a 10 frame, and that could be used for lots of things. But one thing I use this for is to do just like a star or a smiley face for each word that they spell correctly without any help. If they have my help with it, we don't earn something up there. They're just learning and getting help and scaffolding, and that's healthy and good. But if they can do one without any assistant, we'll put a little mark up there. So hopefully this is helpful to you. I'll do some more videos too to show you some more advanced work on it.